Good day and peaceful sky. On December 20th, on the sidelines of the Ukrainian authorities, the following rumors, gossip, insiders and opinions were discussed. Layout. In Ukraine, not only inflation is growing, but also the number of unemployed, who are offered by the authorities to either go to the front or take part in public works for a minimum wage. Moreover, according to the forecasts of international analysts, by the end of this year, the poverty level in Ukraine will grow to almost 30%. So, according to the statement of the Ministry of Economy, now 215,000 unemployed people are registered in the State Employment Service, although their actual number in Ukraine reaches at least 2.6 million people. We should not forget about those Ukrainians whom the military conflict forced to quit their jobs and go abroad, and there are more than 14.5 million of them, of which at least 11.7 million went to the EU countries. At the same time, according to forecasts, in 2023 the unemployed in the state will be just over 2.8 million people. It is noteworthy that the Cabinet of Ministers decided that the officially registered unemployed, who have not found a job within 30 days, will be involved in socially useful work, the recovery army of the country. The Ministry of Economy is convinced that this initiative will help Ukrainians, especially in small towns, to earn money and rebuild their communities at the same time. Here are just those who want to do not the easiest work, for example, strengthen dams, clear the coast near reservoirs and rivers, harvest firewood, unload humanitarian aid, etc., for 6,700 hryvnias, $170, not to say a lot. At the same time, according to the forecasts of the World Bank, by the end of 2022 in Ukraine more than 8 million people will live below the poverty line. Exposure. The delivery of the Patriots is by no means a settled issue. The US is putting the efficiency of its systems at stake, which it sells around the world. It took a huge effort and millions of investments to hush up the case with Saudi Arabia in the information space, when the Patriots missed a missile attack on the refinery. In Ukraine, the reputational risk is many times higher. Layout. All next year there will be a shortage of energy resources in the EU. Prices will remain high, which will cause great damage to Europe. The Western press is already writing about it. At one point, the EU will face a choice. Or deepen debt, raise tariffs, and lose business because of expensive energy resources, or stop the Ukrainian crisis and try to find an acceptable price and scheme. We are watching, but next year will be more difficult for the economy than even 2022. Gossip. Coincidence? In the morning, a fire broke out on a gas pipeline in Chuvashia, Russia. Everyone immediately started talking about the tricks of the Ukrainian sabotage reconnaissance group. However, now every fire is attributed to the sabotage reconnaissance group. Now gas transit to Europe is blocked after an explosion on a gas pipeline in Chuvashia, and gas prices have climbed up, amounting to almost $1,300. Someone decided not to wait long, but even faster to force European businesses to flee the EU to the US and other countries where energy resources are 2 to 3 times cheaper. Opinion. In Ukraine and in Russia, media is handled by people who live in a different reality than the people. Russian officials were strongly hated and hated for this, Ukrainian ones too. It's just that in Ukraine the mess was public, but in the Russian Federation it was hidden. If at the beginning of the war the functionaries of the office of the president caught the wave and were able to beautifully beat the Russians in the information field, now Bankovaya is increasingly getting into scandals, becoming the same as their opponents. Here is a good example. Advisor to the head of the office of the president Misha Podolyak is so worried about the terrible conditions of Saakashvili, but he doesn't see point blank how 95% of Ukrainians live in conditions hundreds of times worse, but the office of the president is in no hurry to help them. This person considers himself an information game guru, but makes such clumsy mistakes. As the source explains, the reason is that the office of the president considers the Ukrainian people stupid and naive, who do not have political memory, since they have been elected to power by the same thieves all the years, and also do not have critical thinking. Inside. The source said that the office of the president received from the general staff an analysis of the transition of hostilities into a protracted phase, which could last up to 2 or 3 years. Opinion. Borispol made the first flights today since the start of the war. 2 Turkish military transport aircraft Airbus A400M, which had been stationed in Borispol since February, safely left the airspace of Ukraine. At the end of February, the planes delivered military cargo to Kyiv and were waiting for the evacuation of something very important. Ukraine is not Russia. Turkey cannot refuse delicate requests today. Belarus. As a result of yesterday's talks, Lukashenko got what he wanted for a very long time, common gas prices with the Russian Federation. Now the Belarusian economy will receive an additional incentive. We will find out how good a negotiator Putin is. The main desire of Moscow is the entry into the war of the Republic of Belarus, and not just the provision of its territory, factories and training bases. The army of Belarus is small, but well trained and disciplined. Today, the movement of equipment towards the Ukrainian border has already been recorded, but this can be both planned work and an operation to divert the reserves of the armed forces of Ukraine. Gossip. The source points out that the Western lobby offered Zelensky a trip to the United States in order to push through the allocation of the $38 billion tranche, which the Biden administration is now promoting, and which will be calculated for the whole of 2023. Therefore, Zelensky went to Donbass today, so that against this background, after the heroic trip, go to Washington, and his competitors could not say that at the time of the Bakhmutov meat grinder he went to visit his partners. See you later. Take care of yourself.